Becky Chapin with the Planning Department.
Stacy Curry, Planning Department.
I'm David Harrison with TAF.
Hi, I'm Janet Scholl with the Planning Department.
And Isaac Conlon, also with the Planning Department.
I'm Paisley Spurgeon, and we're all three seniors at TAF Academy.
I'm Michael.
Sophia.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Should we start or wait?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
All right.
So our mission, climate change is happening. I mean, we all know the climate is changing, and the polar ice caps are melting, and sea levels rising, right? And it's most likely being caused by CO2 emissions. So we were faced with the task of figuring out how we could lower CO2 emissions in the Puget Sound region.
All right. So right here we have a pie graph showing the example of bicycle emissions. So those give out 2.3 grams, and then walking or running emissions, which gives out 6.3 grams. And to compare that to something else, we took helicopter emissions, and those give out 180.5 grams of emissions.
Okay, so the average car is driven more than 10,000 miles per year, and that's burning 550 gallons of oil. In order to reduce the CO2 emissions in the Puget Sound area, I think it's best if we can reduce all the cars on the roads.
Okay, so in 1 year, a car produces 650 pounds of carbon or CO2. It also produces 105 pounds of hydrocarbons and then 50 pounds of nitrogen.
We need a way to get the cars off the roads in Puget Sound. So how can we do it without spending a bunch of money or changing things, like drastically changing things? So we need something that's affordable and realistic.
So what we've found, so we found a way to decrease dependency on cars, and bike lanes are a great way to not only reduce CO2 but also get people more active. What we've chosen was
The roads that we chose were 320th, right here, the First Avenue, and Dash Point and Military, because they're some of the most cars go by there, and we found that there's not really a bike lane, so we would really want to see. And then the approximate cost of this is between $5,000 to $25,000.
We compared that to another project that we saw, and that was the price range for that. So that wouldn't necessarily be the price range for our project of putting bike lanes in Federal Way, but just something to go off of. Okay, so we want to make Federal Way a healthier place. And by putting in the bike lanes, we can get people out of their cars and onto a bike. I mean, they'll be healthier, and it will be a healthier environment. Puget Sound will be a healthier environment. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks. Feedback. One question I had, the price of the bike lanes, what did you say?
That was compared to a project, I think. That was compared to another project.
it was compared to a project down in Thurston County, because they were working on a similar project, and we found that price range from theirs. So we found an approximate price range.
They had to totally widen roads and take out things and totally redesign.
Oh.
Yeah.
So was that 1,000 or million?
That was 1,000.
1,000.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's probably a little off. I would
Yeah.
guess. I would guess pretty much 5 million, but I don't know how long it was. You know, if it was 100 feet long, it could be 5,000. But
Well, that's what they said per mile.
Yeah, that's
Oh,
that's
okay.
still way.
Yeah.
It's still too low per mile.
Oh, you think?
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. If if you look at, what would be an interesting thing for you guys to look at, you know, Mayor McGinn in Seattle is an avid bicyclist, bicycle proponent, and he's had a bunch of stuff on the news and stuff. And he just spent $2.5 million on one road. I can't remember where it is, but I bet you if you go on like City of Seattle homepage, look for bike lanes and stuff, there's going to be a ton of it on there.
Was it
Mhm.
Westlake or something?
Well, there's,
I can't
Seattle
remember.
has a Greenways group, which is citizen, I don't know if you checked into them at
Yeah.
all? You have?
Mhm.
Yeah, because they're citizen-based, but they're very well connected now with SDOT, which is the Seattle Department of Transportation. So they're talking a lot more.
Yeah.
But it is very grassroots, but they've got the staff engaged in the mayor.
The
big
mayor
time.
is super engaged, and like I say, he's
Mm.
what the other interesting part of the McGinn thing and the bike lanes in Seattle is there's quite a few people against it because it takes away parking
Yeah.
and you know, businesses don't seem to like it and things. So, you know, there's a flip side. You know, Federal Way, the BPA trail, and you guys familiar with the BPA trail?
Yeah.
That was designed as a multimodal trail, so it was designed for bicycles to go from like Twin Lakes to the mall and stuff. So whenever you can do a separated trail like that, it's the best way. We don't have we have a few bike lanes. Yeah, sadly they're expensive, but yeah, it's a good presentation. You know, carbon dioxide and reducing it, you know, carbon emissions and carbon credits and all that stuff you hear is a big issue.
Ken, what's your feedback on those particular street segments in terms of, you know?
Well, 320th, we just improved for the way from I-5 to, you know, 320th is we've just done all those improvements from I-5 to, well, maybe even further from Military Road to 99, we're just beyond to 11th, we've just already improved the road, so chances of changing it are probably
Okay.
pretty slim. 320th is, as you say, one of the 320th and Campus Drive, 348, two busiest roads in the city, probably busier than Highway 99. Very small chance of getting bike lanes on it. And a lot of people, you know, because we look at recreational bicyclists and then commuter bicyclists, and a lot of people don't like riding on 320.
No.
Because they're afraid of getting run over.
Yeah.
And then, you know, like on 99, our HOV lane, there's an HOV lane on, and we've always put that a bicycle lane.
Yeah.
But it makes sense. 509, I drive 509 a lot. I see a lot of professional isn't the right word. On 509 on the weekends and stuff, you see a whole ton of I don't know what you call them. You know, you have heavy into bicycling.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You got the bicycle gear on.
Stretch fans.
Yeah, straight fans.
A lot of stretch fans.
Yeah, going down 509. So you see a lot of bicyclists on it now. 509 has never really come to the surface. I think it is on our bike
It is, and
thing. We just have never had money to do projects on it.
so I don't know if you saw, the city has a bicycle pedestrian master plan that was adopted a couple of years back. Were you able to print that?
Yeah,
out?
she gave us a-
Yeah.
she gave us a
So you
copy of
just
that.
got it today,
Yeah.
correct?
Yeah.
And you
Yeah.
hadn't seen it before today?
No, we haven't.
So there's a lot of good information in there, and that was something that Public Works and Planning worked on together, and it will become part of our comprehensive plan, which is the overall planning document for the city vision. And it was adopted by council, so it's sort of in an advisory capacity at the moment, just because of the way state law works and how we can amend comp plans to do it at a certain timing. But anyway, it's still a document we're very much using, but I would take a look at it because it does have recommendations for 320th and Campus, which is 348 down there. Not necessarily for bike lanes, and we had some consultants that were able to study this and actually look at all the street sections, how the travel lanes are being used, the speed of the traffic, the volume, and it's pretty heavy, as you all know, on 320th. So what they came up with as a recommendation is something called a shared use path. So it's not like the BPA trail, which is just completely a separated trail for non-motorized traffic, but basically what it would be is like a widened sidewalk situation along Campus and 320th to take bicycle and pedestrian travelers, but outside of the pavement area. So it's a recommendation. There was some very preliminary budget attached to it, and I think that's captured in that report. If not, you can email me, and there's might be an appendix we can find. But it was very preliminary, very rough, and with both of those, very challenging to implement, because there isn't any more right away, but we'd have to go out and find area, develop it. Sometimes there's utilities that might be in the way underground.
Yeah.
There's a lot more work to be done, but I think you've definitely hit on a lot of the routes that are very popular that people would like to be able to bike on, and they're challenging.
South-
And other than the spandex guys.
With South
not many
312th
people do
Street,
it.
South 312th Street from 28th to 99, and then 23rd Avenue, which is from not quite 312, 316 to around the mall, part of the mall. That's where we implemented something similar to what Janet said, where we've got a 12-foot sidewalk, and we physically changed the ordinance that allowed bikes on sidewalks, because state law doesn't allow bikes on sidewalks. But in the downtown, we changed the ordinance to allow bicycles on sidewalks. And in theory, the 12-foot sidewalks are to, 12-foot sidewalks, there's electric bikes go on it.
Sorry.
No, they're good.
And another group, there's a group that's been kind of active in Federal Way, maybe trying to get a greenways group going, modeled after the Seattle plan. And they've been looking at a neighborhood around the Twin Lakes, shopping area down there at Campus and 21st. And, kind of similar to what you're proposing, bike lanes, but more just shared routes and paint, very low cost, but a way to get some better connections with neighborhoods and schools. So they might be some folks we could connect you with. They'd probably like to hear your presentation, and you could hear what they're looking to do.
What was that? Greenway?
Oh gosh, what is it called?
Cascade, isn't it?
Well, Forterra used to be Cascade Lane Conservancy, is the nonprofit that's been helping these citizens kind of get started.
Mhm.
But I think they're calling it Federal Way Greenways Group.
Okay.
And they're just been meeting a lot, riding bikes around, kind of coming
Yeah.
up with some routes. But they're looking at something a little different than what you're looking at, because they're looking at very, very low cost, just, and off the beaten track routes, so that bikes wouldn't necessarily be competing with the heavy volumes of cars, so different ways to get around. But they'd be good folks to check it out. Yeah, that's it.
Engineer?
Yeah, and we've also talked with staff members and students about if they want to bike to school, and what we figured out is
The majority of them, said that if there were bike lanes on, I think it was the most was Pack Highway and Military, because our school's on 272nd. So on Pack Highway and Military, if there were bike lanes, then they would bike to school. I mean, if there was one on Military, I would bike to school. But since it's
Yeah, it's
pretty
dangerous.
sketchy, I don't know. I feel like it's kind of scary, really being really close to the cars.
I think that for Pacific Highway in the bike ped plan, there's an alternate route that's looked at, that's maybe to the west of Pacific Highway, kind of somehow connects on to 16, but they're very much, pieced together, so they're not routes you can ride today, it's like a future planning document.
Oh,
So,
okay.
because that was another thing when we were working with the consultants, and our own staff knows this very well, Pacific Highway is just, again, heavy volume, high speed limits, and even with a bike lane, a lot of folks might feel intimidated, so we started looking at routes like maybe one block to the east or one block to the
Yeah.
west. Is there a way that we could get folks?
Because in, was the Alki Beach, Alki put in a bike lane so that there was the parking, here's the road, here's the parking, here's the bike lane. So it's protected by the barrier of cars. I mean, and that'd be something else to look into, creating maybe a natural barrier with shrubs or something, so.
Can you talk a little bit about maybe how the bike lanes could be funded? Like where would we get our money from? Would it be through PSRC or?
right now, I don't know of any, specific funding for bike lanes. I know when we do a project, typically it's funded through the state or the feds, and if you have, and if you've got a sidewalk, they add so many points, and if you've got a bike lane or bus route or something, they add so many points. So usually, if you have those kinds of things, they give you more points, which means your project gets better chance of being funded and getting the money. So I don't know. It's like that Seattle thing again. McGinn really pushed. I don't know where he got his money from. We do have some money. I think it's half a cent from the gas tax, which I think it goes to pedestrian facilities. I don't think it's bike. But I know. So the bike money, obviously, bikes don't pay gas tax, and bikes
Right.
don't pay tabs every year. So no real funding, but it's definitely encouraged. And Seattle and Tacoma, I know, are big into it. Ruston Way, if you've ever gone along Ruston Way. But what I was going to say is, I know our planning department has those. You encourage people to put bike racks in at buildings. I can't remember which buildings, like City Hall, some of these bigger buildings, and CTR. We've got commuter trip reduction, which is a state law, which encourages biking and bus. So those kinds of things. And I guess now you see all the buses with the racks on the front to take the bikes and stuff. So, but I know we encourage people to put racks in. I don't know if we require it, but I know we encourage it.
Yeah, I don't think the code
It's not-
requires it. It's encouraging kind of a.
Because I know, like I remember the new library. They put those locking ones. Didn't they put some locking ones in or
Like
something?
lockers?
Well, yeah, they come over and lock the bike in or something.
Okay, yeah.
Is that in the community design guidelines? That language?
I believe so. I believe there's language in our community design guidelines, and those typically would be dictating what happens with commercial development. One thing I looked at recently with a project, a very large multifamily project, was requiring some bike racks and bike parking for the residents. But it was something we kind of had to get at because they were wanting to reduce the parking for cars, so we said, great, we get more parking for bikes, but we don't have a code requirement that says, and some cities do, again, like at Seattle, and cities are starting to adopt code that says if you're building an apartment or a multifamily building, you have to provide not only car parking, but bike parking, so that people want to, and it has to be secure. It's just a bike rack isn't necessarily going to work either. You're not going to leave your nice $500,000 bike in a bike rack overnight, right?
$50
in an
bike.
apartment. So, anywho,
What's interesting, if you go to different countries like the Netherlands, you go to a bus stop and there's like 300 bikes right there. So it's definitely depends on where you go, how much play the bikes get.
So I have a question for you all. Where are you headed with your project? Like, what's your next step, or it seems like you have a pretty good start on things considering it's October, and this is something that might be due, in May? Or I'm not sure what your timeline is. I just know lots of your projects are due towards the end.
Oh no, next month we have to start our action plan.
Okay.
So we have to present to the board at the end of this month. So
Okay.
we present it to you guys so you guys can like give us constructive feedback.
Got it.
I'm surprised that the bikes had any carbon footprint. That surprised me. Is that from making
Oh,
the
it's
bike?
from like
Breathing.
Breathing, just from
Uh,
breathing gives you that much.
Exhaling. Yeah.
Yeah, I was curious about that.
Especially uphill.
Yeah, right, so Federal Way is pretty good then, unless you're in Marine Hills. I'm surprised there's much of anything like that.
You know what I think, because I feel, so your goal though is to really get to the, sorry.
I know.
It's really distracting. Cute, anyway, sorry. I'm assuming your goal is to come up with a really kind of pretty concrete project recommendation, is that the correct assumption?
Yeah,
Because that's what I heard you saying, and you're looking at really citywide, pretty huge. I mean, just knowing what it costs to do just a mile. You know what I would recommend is that maybe you take this as a background and maybe hone in on a corridor or a particular connection or neighborhood or something that, whether it's your school, And then dial it down a little bit, and I would recommend maybe getting with that Greenways group, the one that's existing, because you might either wanna piggyback off of what they're starting to look at and help them, or, help them in some way, or model what they're doing and say, well, we'd like to do something like that in our neighborhood, which is over by our school, cause they're looking again at that Twin Lakes,
Yeah.
kinda Westway area. Those are a couple suggestions I have. I feel like right now it's really huge, and I think you got a sense of what the real world limitations might be for actually funding, some projects, so it might be kind of neat to dial it down to, like I said, a corridor or a neighborhood, and then you can really get into some more specifics. And take a look at our report.
Yeah,
Our
might be
bike
some
ped
costs
plan
in
too.
there.
Cause they did look at a lot of corridors, they being the consultant team, looked at a lot of corridors, and there's some information in there, and if it's not in there, it might be an appendix. I can get you my card, or maybe Eric or Rick's in Public Works, and if you have but anyway, there's some analysis that was done on things like how wide are the travel lanes, could you take away a lane and put in a bike lane, or could you not? And that would help you guys a lot, cause someone's already done some of that work. Those would be my.
I wonder if Seattle's done some analysis on how much carbon monoxide or what they expect to reduce. If you put in a mile of bike lane, what it would reduce. How many cars would it take off? I wonder if Seattle's done that
It might have, I'm
analysis.
sure.
You would think they would
That
have done.
information is somewhere, I guarantee that somewhere, someone looked at that somewhere.
Well, yeah,
They
and
probably-
specifically for those streets too.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting, cause that would be the way to sell it, obviously, is by going with bikes, you this much less carbon monoxide.
Yeah. And
Till it
thinking-
rains.
And so thinking back to your opening, pie chart example, where I'm kinda curious why you picked helicopters and not the obvious one, which would be like cars.
That was-
In your
I
comparison.
know, I was thinking of that while we were presenting that.
Yeah, it's kind of a big stretch.
Yeah. I guess we wanted the visual of how small bikes are compared to something bigger.
Just wondering, yeah, cause we're not necessarily gonna be taking helicopters out of the sky with the bike lane.
Right, we just
so-
wanted a shock, I guess, so.
Yeah, no, it was,
Still probably pretty dramatic with the cars, I would think. in terms of-
Yeah,
Yeah.
still would, but.
yeah.
Just a good attention grabber.
Yeah.
Caught your attention.
Makes
What
you
about
think.
submarines?
Oh, yeah.
I guess they're nuclear.
That battery,
So, are you proposing to make any changes to this based on our feedback before you go to the next step, or is it?
Yeah, we're gonna
yeah.
change that chart,
Fix our things, narrow everything down,
Yeah.
narrow it down to a smaller scale instead of a bigger scale.
I still, what is the next step? What would you guys do after this one?
Next up, we're gonna go and revise.
Yeah.
We're gonna present, I guess, talk to our teacher about what feedback we got, and then go from there.
Yeah, figure out where the bikes are going, I think that's the key.
Yeah.
Are they going to work, are they going to school, are they going to the park? Dash Point Road, it's mainly the people that are going who are doing the 30 miles today. Those are the kind of people you can have on Dash Point Road, I think. Whereas, if you're trying to get people to the shops or to the stores, whatever, maybe the BPA trail is kind of the spine that people go on, and then they go off of that too. So, I think you can see where they're going.
And also, you can look at the transit center to see if people
Right.
bike there, and then say go to Seattle, they put their bikes on the bus. and,
Yeah.
Maybe they need some bike racks there. I don't know if they have them
I
there or
think
not.
they have stuff.
They do, yeah.
Enough? I wonder how many people use them. You could go down and take a count, say, 5 people today, 10 people, none on the weekend, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Well, they have, yeah. I think they're bike lockers, so I don't know how you know if there's a bike in them.
It's locked, I guess.
Yeah. Anyway.
Okay.
Yeah, and I
Yep,
would say
thank
if
you.
you.
Good.
Yeah, thanks a lot. And I would
Yeah.
just say, I think your presentation is very professional looking. I don't think anybody commented on that. And so, yeah. And the other thing I was gonna say is if you do decide to kind of hone it in a little bit on a neighborhood or a corridor or something more, don't necessarily lose the work you've done on analyzing the need throughout the community. Cause I think, I don't want you to
Yeah.
lose that, but maybe just in terms of
maybe you can start with this and then kind of go down to